What if I told you that you don't have to give up bread, rice, or potatoes to avoid big blood sugar spikes? Researchers who study diabetes and insulin resistance see this pattern every day, but most people are missing the bigger picture. The problem isn't the carbohydrate itself, it's the velocity at which it hits your system and the state of your metabolic machinery when it arrives. When you eat naked carbs, they flood your blood, causing a process called glycation. Think of it as internal caramelization. These sugar molecules bond to proteins in your eyes, kidneys, and skin, creating advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. This is essentially a form of internal rust that damages your organs and accelerates biological aging. In this video, I'll show you practical, evidence-based habits that let you keep the foods you love by fundamentally changing their metabolic behavior. This isn't personal medical advice, so if you're on medication, talk with your clinician before making changes. First, the core idea. Not all carbs behave the same because your body is not a static furnace, it's a complex chemical plant. Left unregulated, a carb is a quick flare. Managed wisely, it becomes a slow, steady burn. Principle 1. The molecular transformation of resistant starch. Most starch in hot potatoes or rice is amylopectin, which is rapidly digested into glucose. However, when you cook and then cool these foods for 24 hours, a fascinating physical change occurs called retrogradation. The starch molecules reorganize into a crystalline structure known as resistant starch type 3. This starch is resistant because your digestive enzymes literally cannot find the lock to open these molecules. Instead of turning into sugar in your small intestine, it travels to your large intestine. Here, it becomes a feast for your microbiome. Your gut bacteria ferment this starch into butyrate, a short-chain fatty acid. Science shows butyrate doesn't just feed your colon cells, it enters the bloodstream and signals your liver to stop producing excess sugar. Clinical trials published in the Asia-Pacific Journal of Clinical Nutrition confirm that cooling and then reheating rice or pasta reduces the glycemic response by up to 50%. You are essentially turning a high-calorie carb into a prebiotic fiber. Principle 2. The core biochemical buffer. Food pairing and acids. Never eat carbs naked. When you pair a starch with protein and healthy lipids, you are changing the gastric emptying rate. Protein triggers the release of cholecystokinin, a hormone that tells your stomach to slow down. Fat creates a physical barrier that coats the starch particles. But the real secret weapon is acetic acid. Science reveals that acetic acid inhibits alpha amylase, the primary enzyme in your saliva and stomach that breaks down long starch chains. Without this enzyme working at full speed, the conversion of bread into sugar is significantly delayed.
Furthermore, vinegar improves the efficiency of GLUT4 transporters, the doors in your muscles that pull sugar out of the blood. A single tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in water before a meal can blunt a glucose spike by nearly 30% and increase insulin sensitivity by 34%. Principle 3. The missing link, the second meal effect. This is a biological loophole most people ignore. Clinical literature describes the second meal effect as the ability of one meal to dictate the glycemic response of the next meal, up to 10 hours later. This is driven by propionate, another fatty acid produced when you eat fermentable fibers like lentils, chickpeas, or beans. These fibers trigger the L cells in your gut to secrete GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1. This is the same hormone that modern blockbuster weight loss drugs try to mimic. By eating a small portion of legumes at lunch, you prime your pancreas and slow down your digestion for dinner. You are essentially building a metabolic shield that stays active all day. Principle 4. Metabolic sequencing, the power of food order. In clinical crossover trials, researchers found that the order of ingestion is as important as the food itself. This is nutrient sequencing. When you start with fiber, vegetables, you create a viscous mesh or a biological filter in the small intestine. When you follow with protein and fats, you further stimulate the satiety hormones. By the time the starches hit your system, the filter is in place, and the stomach is emptying at a snail's pace. A study from Cornell University showed that eating vegetables and protein before carbohydrates led to 37% lower glucose levels compared to eating them in reverse. It's the same meal, but a totally different hormonal outcome. Principle 6. The muscle pump. The soleus secret. After you eat, your blood sugar peaks between 30 and 70 minutes later. This is your window of opportunity. You have a specialized glucose sink in your lower legs called the soleus muscle. Unlike the large quadriceps that burn stored glycogen, the soleus is a slow-twitch muscle designed for endurance. Research from the University of Houston discovered that even light activation of the soleus can double the rate of blood glucose disposal. A 10-minute walk is the gold standard because it uses the skeletal muscle pump to move blood and insulin through the body. If you can't walk, soleus push-ups, simply raising your heels while sitting, can significantly lower the post-meal insulin demand. You are literally using your muscles to eat the sugar before it can damage your arteries. Finally, Principle 6. Circadian insulin sensitivity. Finally, we must respect your circadian rhythm. Your body is not a 24-hour machine. You are most insulin sensitive in the morning when your cortisol is naturally higher, preparing you for activity. As the sun sets, your brain releases melatonin.
While melatonin is great for sleep, it has a side effect. It binds to receptors on your pancreas and tells it to dial down insulin production. Eating a large bowl of pasta at 10 p.m. is a metabolic disaster because your body has going to sleep for the night. The sugar stays in your blood longer, leading to massive glycation overnight. Science suggests finishing your last meal at least 3 hours before bed to allow your blood sugar to return to baseline before the repair processes of deep sleep begin. Putting it all together, your weekly protocol. To turn this science into a lifestyle, follow this simple blueprint. Prepare. Cook your rice or potatoes on Sunday, let them cool for 24 hours, and reheat them as needed. Prime. Have a small serving of beans or lentils at lunch to activate the second meal effect. Sequence. At dinner, start with a green salad with a vinegar-based dressing. Eat your protein next. Save the starch for last. Activate. Spend 10 minutes moving right after your meal. Clean the house, walk the dog, or do heel raises while watching TV. Time. Try to keep your carb-heavy meals earlier in the day and close the kitchen at least 3 hours before sleep. By stacking these evidence-based habits, you are not just dieting, you are mastering your internal biochemistry. You are choosing to turn internal rust into clean fuel. These strategies are low risk but high impact. If you are on insulin or glucose-lowering drugs, please monitor your levels closely, as these hacks are powerful enough to require medication adjustments. Start with one change today, maybe just the vinegar or the 10-minute walk, and watch how your energy stabilizes and your cravings disappear. If you want to dive deeper into the science of longevity and metabolic health, subscribe and join our community. We explore the data so you can own your health.